What if everything you thought you knew about success was wrong? What if the key to building a remarkable life in business wasn't found in traditional advice, but in the uncomfortable truths most people refuse to face? Welcome to WordEcho. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most transformative books on business and life, The Diary of a CEO by Steven Bartlett. This isn't just another self-help book. It's a raw, honest blueprint from someone who built a social media empire from his bedroom and became one of the youngest entrepreneurs to take a company public on the stock exchange. Steven Bartlett didn't follow the traditional path. He dropped out of university, faced rejection after rejection, and built his company, Social Chain, into a global powerhouse. But this book isn't just about his success. It's about the 33 laws he discovered along the way, laws that apply whether you're building a startup, climbing the corporate ladder, or simply trying to live a more meaningful life. Over the next hour and 20 minutes, we'll explore every single one of these laws. We'll unpack the psychology behind them, the stories that illustrate them, most importantly, how you can apply them to transform your own life. So settle in, grab your notebook, and let's begin this journey together. Part 1. The Foundation Laws 128. Law number 1. Fill your 5 buckets in the right order. Let's start with something fundamental. Imagine you have 5 buckets that represent different aspects of your life: knowledge, skills, network, resources, and reputation. Most people try to fill all these buckets simultaneously, spreading themselves thin and making little progress anywhere. Steven argues this is backwards. The first bucket you must fill is knowledge. Not just any knowledge, but specific, valuable knowledge about your chosen field. When Steven started in social media marketing, he didn't have money, connections, or a reputation. But he had time. So he consumed everything he could about social media, psychology, and marketing. He turned himself into a knowledge sponge. Here's why this matters. Knowledge compounds. Every book you read, every course you take, every conversation with an expert adds to your knowledge base. And unlike money, which can be lost, knowledge becomes part of who you are. Once you've built substantial knowledge, you can convert it into skills. Skills are knowledge in action. It's the difference between knowing how social media algorithms work and actually creating content that goes viral. Steven spent countless hours practicing, failing, and refining his skills. He didn't just learn about Facebook ads. He ran thousands of campaigns, analyzed the data, and developed an intuition for what works. With valuable skills, you can now build your network. But notice you're not networking empty-handed. You're bringing knowledge and skills to the table. You become someone worth knowing. Steven could approach potential mentors and partners not as a beggar asking for favors, but as someone who could provide real value. Your network then helps you access resources, capital, opportunities, technology, talent. And finally, as you deliver results using these resources, you build your reputation. Your reputation is the ultimate asset because it works for you even when you're sleeping. The mistake most people make? They try to build their reputation first, or they focus on resources before they have the skills to use them effectively. Fill your buckets in order, and each one makes the next easier to fill. Law number 2. To create something great, first create yourself. This law hits at the heart of personal development. Steven observed something fascinating. The quality of everything you create is limited by the quality of who you are. Your business can't grow beyond your capacity to lead it. Your relationships can't be healthier than your emotional intelligence allows. Your wealth can't exceed your financial understanding. Think about it this way. If you want to build a $100 million company, but you think like someone managing a small shop, you'll hit a ceiling. Your mindset, your habits, your emotional regulation, your communication skills, these aren't separate from your business success. They are your business success. Steven shares a powerful example from his own life. In the early days of Social Chain, he was the bottleneck. Every decision had to go through him. He couldn't delegate because he didn't trust anyone to maintain his standards. But this wasn't really about his team, it was about him. He hadn't developed the leadership skills to train others, the systems thinking to create processes, or the emotional maturity to let go of control. Creating yourself means identifying your gaps and systematically filling them. Maybe you need to become more disciplined. Perhaps you need to develop better communication skills. Maybe you need to learn how to manage stress or process emotions. Whatever it is, working on yourself isn't selfish, it's the most generous thing you can do, because it increases your capacity to serve others and create value in the world. Law number 3. To master it, you must create a stake. Here's an uncomfortable truth. You don't really care about most things. You might say you care about getting fit, learning a language, or building a business. But if there's no real stake, no consequence for failure, your brain doesn't treat it as important. Steven discovered this law when he noticed a pattern. The projects where he had the most to lose were the ones where he performed best. When he dropped out of university, he created a stake. He couldn't just casually try entrepreneurship and fall back on his degree. When he pitched Social Chain to investors, he created a stake. When he made bold public predictions about the company's growth, he created a stake. Stakes activate different parts of your brain. When something truly matters, when your reputation, your money, or your relationships are on the line, you access reserves of focus, creativity, and persistence that simply aren't available when you're just trying something out. But here's the nuance. The stake has to be real to you. It doesn't matter what others think. Some people are motivated by public accountability, so they announce their goals on social media. Others are motivated by financial stakes, so they bet money on their success. Some are motivated by pride, so they make promises to people they respect. The key is to engineer stakes into your goals. Don't just say you want to get healthy. Sign up for a marathon 6 months from now and tell everyone about it. Don't just think about starting a business, quit your job and give yourself no backup plan. This might sound extreme, but comfort is the enemy of excellence. When you have a comfortable escape route, you'll probably take it. Law number 4. Hard work must be leveraged. Now we come to a law that challenges the hustle culture narrative. Yes, hard work matters. But Steven argues that hard work alone is fool's gold. He's seen countless people work themselves to exhaustion with little to show for it, while others seem to achieve more with less effort. The difference? Leverage. Leverage means setting up systems where your effort creates compounding returns. When Steven was building Social Chain, he could have taken on every client himself, working 18-hour days to deliver results. Instead, he built a team. Each person he hired leveraged his effort. He created processes and templates that could be reused. He built technology that automated repetitive tasks. He created content that attracted clients while he slept. There are different types of leverage. There's labor, leverage other people's time and skills. There's capital leverage, using money to multiply your efforts. There's media leverage, creating content that reaches millions. And there's code leverage, building software that works for you infinitely. The modern world offers leverage opportunities that didn't exist before. You can create a podcast that builds your reputation while you focus on other things. You can write a book that sells for years. You can invest in assets that appreciate. You can build online courses that teach while you sleep. But here's what most people miss. Leverage requires upfront investment. You have to work hard to build the leverage before it starts working for you. Steven spent years building his understanding of social media before he could leverage it. He worked incredibly hard in his early 20s, but he was strategic about it, always asking, how can I turn this effort into something that continues creating value? The question isn't how hard are you working? The real question is your hard work creating assets that will continue working for you? Law number 5. You must lean into productive paranoia. This law might seem counterintuitive. Isn't anxiety bad? Shouldn't we be positive and optimistic? Steven argues that the most successful people he's met aren't blindly optimistic. They're productively paranoid. Productive paranoia means constantly asking, what could go wrong? What am I missing? What are my blind spots? Where am I vulnerable? It's not about being negative or fearful. It's about being prepared. Steven shares how this mindset saved Social Chain multiple times. While competitors were celebrating their success, he was wargaming disaster scenarios. What if Facebook changed its algorithm? What if key clients left? What if a competitor undercut them on price? What if a key team member quit? Because he asked these questions, he built redundancy into the business. He diversified the client base. He cross-trained team members. He maintained higher cash reserves. When problems inevitably arose, he wasn't caught off guard. But productive paranoia isn't just about risk management. It's also about opportunity recognition. When you're constantly scanning the environment for threats, you also spot emerging trends. You notice small shifts before they become obvious. You see patterns others miss. The key word is productive. Unproductive paranoia is anxiety that paralyzes you. Productive paranoia is concern that mobilizes you. It asks what if, and then immediately follows with, so what am I going to do about it? Law number 6. You must not lose momentum. Momentum, Steven argues, is one of the most underrated forces in business and life. When you have momentum, everything feels easier. Doors open. People say yes. Problems that seemed insurmountable become manageable. But when you lose momentum, even simple tasks feel impossible. Think about a rocket ship. Most of the fuel is burned just to break free from Earth's gravity. Once it's in space, it needs very little energy to travel vast distances. Your life and business work the same way. Starting is hard. Getting the first client is hard. Publishing your first piece of content is hard. But once you're moving, maintaining that movement requires much less energy than starting from scratch. Steven obsesses over momentum. He tracks it. He measures it. He makes decisions based on whether they'll maintain or accelerate momentum. This means sometimes he takes opportunities that aren't perfect, simply because saying yes keeps the ball rolling. It means he publishes content even when it's not quite ready, because consistency matters more than perfection. But here's the critical insight. Momentum is fragile. It can be destroyed much faster than it can be built. Taking a long vacation right when your business is growing might feel deserved, but it can kill momentum. Pausing your content creation because you're not feeling inspired can reset you to zero. Waiting for perfect conditions before launching can mean you never launch at all. The antidote? Build systems that maintain momentum even when you're not at your best. Commit to showing up daily. Create deadlines that force action. Surround yourself with people who expect progress from you. Make momentum maintenance your highest priority. Law number 7. You must sweat the small stuff in a world that tells you not to sweat the small stuff. Steven takes the opposite position. He argues that excellence is built in the details. The small stuff is the big stuff. When he was building Social Chain, competitors would laugh at his obsession with minor details. Why does it matter what font you use in a proposal? Why spend an hour perfecting an email? Why agonize over the user experience of a form that only takes 30 seconds to complete? Steven's answer? Because small details signal everything else. If you can't be bothered to fix a typo in your email, why should clients trust you with their $1 million marketing budget? If your office is messy and disorganized, why should investors believe you can organize a complex business? If you're late to meetings by 5 minutes, why should partners trust you with major deadlines? But it's deeper than signaling. Small details compound. A slightly better email gets a slightly higher response rate. Over 100 emails? That's significant. A slightly better product experience leads to slightly better retention. Over thousands of customers? That's transformative. Small improvements in daily habits lead to dramatic differences over years. The Japanese have a concept called kasan, continuous small improvements. Steven adopted this philosophy. He didn't try to revolutionize everything overnight. He just tried to make everything 1% better. The proposal template, the onboarding process, the meeting structure, the hiring rubric. 1% here, 1% there. Over time, these small improvements created a massive competitive advantage. Most people ignore small details because they seem insignificant. But Steven understood that excellence is a habit, not an act. If you practice excellence in small things, you'll perform excellently when it really matters. If you're sloppy with small things, you'll be sloppy with big things too. Law number 8. The unfair advantage is your authentic self in a world obsessed with copying successful people.
Steven makes a radical argument. Your unfair advantage is being yourself.
Not the person you think you should be. not the polished, perfect version you present on social media. Your actual, authentic, weird, flawed self. Here's why. There's only one of you. Your specific combination of experiences, perspectives, quirks, and interests is unique. When you try to be like someone else, you're competing on their terms, where they have years of advantage. But when you lean into what makes you different, you're in a category of one. Steven built his brand by being authentically himself, young, tattooed entrepreneur who admitted his failures, shared his insecurities, and didn't pretend to have all the answers. In a business world full of polished executives spouting corporate jargon, his authenticity was refreshing. It attracted the right people and repelled the wrong ones. But authenticity isn't just a branding strategy. It's sustainable. Pretending to be someone else is exhausting. You have to constantly maintain the facade, remember what you've said, and suppress who you really are. Eventually, the mask slips. But when you're authentic, there's nothing to remember. You just show up as yourself. The challenge is that authenticity requires courage. You have to be willing to be judged. You have to accept that some people won't like you. You have to resist the pressure to conform. But here's the trade-off. The people who do connect with your authentic self become loyal advocates. They don't just like what you do, they like who you are. Steven encourages asking, what makes me weird? What do I know that others don't? What perspectives do I have from my unique background? What do I love that most people in my field ignore? Then lean into those things. Make them your brand. Make them your advantage. Part 2. Building Excellence Laws 9 to 16. Law number 9. The value loop is everything. Now we enter territory that separates amateurs from professionals. Steven introduces the concept of the value loop, the cycle of creating value, capturing value, and reinvesting it to create more value. This simple loop, when properly understood and optimized, explains almost all business success. Most people break the loop. They create value but don't capture it. They work hard but don't charge appropriately. Or they capture value but don't reinvest it. They make money but spend it all on lifestyle. Or they try to capture value before creating it. They raise money but have no product. The loop must be complete and continuous. When Social Chain delivered exceptional results for clients, that was creating value. When they charged premium prices and got testimonials, that was capturing value. When they invested profits into better talent, better technology, and better processes, that was multiplying future value creation. But here's what most people miss. The loop accelerates. Each cycle should be bigger than the last. You create value, which allows you to capture more value, which allows you to invest in creating even more value. It's compounding in action. Steven obsessively tracked this loop. Every project was evaluated on these criteria. Did it create real value? Did we capture appropriate value? Are we reinvesting wisely? When any part of the loop was broken, he fixed it immediately. A client who wanted free work? Breaking the loop. A profitable project where profits were wasted on fancy offices? Breaking the loop. A service that didn't genuinely help clients? Breaking the loop. The fastest path to building something substantial is to optimize this loop, create massive value, capture it efficiently, and reinvest it strategically. Then repeat faster and bigger, over and over. Law number 10. You don't need to be in the room. This law addresses one of the biggest bottlenecks in any growing venture, the founder who believes they must be involved in everything. Steven learned this lesson painfully. As Social Chain grew, he found himself in back-to-back meetings, approving every decision, reviewing every piece of work. He was exhausted, and the company's growth was slowing. Then he realized something. His presence in meetings often made them worse, not better. People would defer to his opinion instead of thinking independently. They'd wait for his approval instead of taking ownership. He was becoming the bottleneck he was trying to avoid. The solution wasn't just delegation. It was building a culture and systems that didn't need him. He hired people smarter than himself in specific areas. He created clear principles and frameworks for decision-making. He established metrics that provided feedback. He built trust by allowing people to make mistakes and learn. Here's the counterintuitive part. When you remove yourself from being essential, you become more valuable. Steven shifted from being a doer to being a strategist. Instead of approving every campaign, he focused on setting direction, hiring exceptional people, and optimizing systems. The company grew faster. The team became more capable, and he had time to think about the future instead of drowning in the present. The question to ask yourself: what am I currently doing that doesn't actually require me? What decisions am I making that others could make with the right framework? What meetings am I attending out of habit rather than necessity? Where is my presence actually hurting more than helping by creating dependency? Law number 11. Avoid ignorance momentum. This law might be the most dangerous trap for successful people. Ignorance momentum is when you keep doing something simply because you've always done it, without questioning whether it still makes sense. It's the institutional inertia that kills companies, relationships, and careers. Steven noticed this pattern everywhere. Companies that dominated industries became obsolete because they had too much momentum behind their old ways of doing things. Individuals who were successful in their careers suddenly became irrelevant because they stopped learning and adapting. Relationships failed because people kept repeating patterns that hadn't worked in years. The insidious thing about ignorance and momentum is that it feels safe. You're doing what you know. You're following the proven playbook. You're sticking with what worked before. But the world changes. What worked yesterday might not work tomorrow. Markets shift. Technology evolves. Consumer preferences change. Competitors innovate. Steven built a practice of regular, zero-based thinking into his life and business. Every quarter he'd ask, if I were starting today, knowing what I know now, would I make the same choices? Would I pursue these clients? Would I structure the team this way? Would I invest in these same areas? If the answer was no, he'd make changes immediately, regardless of how much momentum was behind the current approach. This requires brutal honesty. It means admitting that things you invested heavily in aren't working. It means acknowledging that your past decisions might have been wrong. It means being willing to change direction, even when it's uncomfortable. The antidote to ignorance momentum is curiosity. Keep asking why. Keep learning. Keep exposing yourself to new ideas. Stay around people who challenge your thinking. Build feedback loops that reveal when things aren't working. And develop the courage to change course when needed. Law number 12. You have to say no more than you say yes in a culture that celebrates busyness and opportunities. Steven advocates for something radical, saying no to almost everything. He argues that every yes is 1,000 no's. When you say yes to one opportunity, you're saying no to every other opportunity you could pursue with that time and energy. Early in his career, Steven said yes to everything. Every meeting, every project, every speaking opportunity, every social invitation. He thought this was how you build a network and create opportunities, but he was wrong. He was busy, but not productive. He was visible, but not impactful. He was exhausted and making little real progress on what mattered. The turning point came when he realized that successful people aren't defined by what they do, they're defined by what they don't do. Warren Buffett doesn't invest in most opportunities. Steve Jobs killed most product ideas at Apple. The best leaders ruthlessly prioritize. Steven developed a framework. For every opportunity, he asks whether it's a clear yes, not a maybe. Not a, it could be good, but a definite, enthusiastic yes. If it's not a clear yes, it's a no. This simple rule transformed his effectiveness. But saying no is hard. You don't want to miss opportunities. You don't want to disappoint people. You fear that you might need these connections later. Steven's advice? Get comfortable with disappointing people. Get comfortable with FOMO. Get comfortable with the possibility that you might miss something good. Because here's the truth. By saying yes to everything, you're guaranteeing that you won't do anything excellently. By saying no to most things, you create spacetto, do a few things exceptionally. And exceptional results from a few things beat mediocre results from many things every time. The practice: before accepting any commitment, wait 24 hours. Ask yourself, in a week, will I regret saying yes to this? In a month? In a year? If the answer is anything but definitely not, say no. Law number 13. Done is better than perfect. Here's a law that challenges every perfectionist. The world rewards action more than it rewards perfection. Steven, who admits to perfectionist tendencies himself, learned this through painful experience. He'd spend weeks perfecting a proposal, only to lose the opportunity to a competitor who submitted something good enough in days. He'd delay launching products until they were flawless, missing market windows and losing momentum. The problem with perfectionism isn't the desire for quality, it's that perfection is impossible, and pursuing it prevents progress. There's always one more thing to fix, one more improvement to make, one more revision to complete. Meanwhile, time passes. Opportunities close. Competitors move forward. Steven adopted a new philosophy. Ship it. Get it into the world. You can always improve it later, but you can't improve what doesn't exist. Version 1 doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be real. This applies to everything. That email you've been crafting for 30 minutes? Good enough, send it. That business idea you've been refining for months? Good enough, test it with real customers. That content you want to create? Good enough, publish it and learn from the feedback. But here's the nuance. Done is better than perfect doesn't mean accepting sloppy work. It means understanding the difference between high standards and perfectionism. High standards mean delivering quality work efficiently. Perfectionism means endless tinkering that adds minimal value. Steven uses the 80-20 rule. Can you get 80% of the value with 20% of the effort? If yes, do that and move on. The remaining 20% of value often requires 80% more effort, and that's rarely worth it. The mental shift required. Stop thinking of work as finished products and start thinking of them as iterations. Version 1 leads to version 2, which leads to version 3. Each iteration is better than the last because you're learning from real-world feedback rather than theoretical perfection. Law number 14. You must outfail the competition. Now we reach one of Steven's most counterintuitive laws. The goal isn't to avoid failure, it's to fail more than anyone else. This completely inverts how most people think about success. We're taught to minimize failures, to avoid mistakes, to play it safe. Steven argues, this is backwards. Here's why. Failure is information. Every failure teaches you something that success never could. When something works, you often don't know exactly why. But when something fails, you get precise feedback about what doesn't work. The more failures you accumulate, the more you learn. The more you learn, the better your decisions become. But it's deeper than just learning. Failing more than your competition means trying more than your competition. It means taking more risks. It means moving faster. It means testing more ideas. Most of your competitors are paralyzed by fear of failure, so they try fewer things. If you can overcome that fear and attempt 10 times as much, you'll succeed 10 times as much, even if your failure rate is the same. Steven shares his own failure, resumes the businesses that didn't work. The campaigns that flopped, the hires that were disasters, the partnerships that fell apart. Each failure stung. But each failure also educated him in ways that success never could. He learned what customers actually want by creating products they didn't want. He learned what messages resonate by trying messages that didn't. He learned what team members to hire by hiring the wrong ones first. The key is failing fast and cheaply. You want to accumulate failures quickly, learn from them, and move on. You don't want massive company-ending failures. You want small, controlled experiments where failure is informative, rather than catastrophic. This requires reframing failure entirely. Instead of seeing failure as a reflection of your worth or abilities, see it as data. Instead of feeling shame when things don't work, feel curiosity. Instead of hiding failures, analyze them openly. The teams and companies that learn fastest are those that fail fastest. The practice. Set a failure quota. Seriously, aim to fail a certain number of times per month. Try ideas you're not sure about. Test hypotheses you expect might be wrong. Experiment outside your comfort zone. If you're not failing regularly, you're not trying enough. Law number 15. A competitive advantage is found in pain. This law requires embracing discomfort in a way most people never will. Steven argues that competitive advantage doesn't come from being smarter or more talented than others. It comes from being willing to do things others won't because they're too uncomfortable. Think about it. Most business advice is publicly available. Most strategies are known. Most opportunities are visible to everyone. So why doesn't everyone succeed? Because knowing what to do and actually doing it are completely different. The gap between knowledge and action is pain. Steven built Social Chain by doing things that were painful. While competitors slept, he worked. While others avoided difficult conversations with clients, he had them. While others delegated uncomfortable tasks, he did them himself until he truly understood them. While others stayed in their comfort zone of familiar clients and services, he pursued challenging opportunities that forced growth. But this isn't about working harder than everyone else. It's about working harder specifically on the things others avoid. It's about embracing the productive discomfort that creates growth. Having difficult conversations, making cold calls, facing rejection, admitting mistakes, firing people, pivoting strategies. These things are universally uncomfortable, which is precisely why they create advantage for those willing to do them. Steven distinguishes between productive pain and unnecessary pain. Productive pain is the discomfort of growth that makes you better. Unnecessary pain is suffering that serves no purpose. The key is learning to identify which is which and lean into the former while avoiding the latter. The question to ask: what are the uncomfortable things in your field that everyone knows they should do, but almost no one actually does? Cold outreach? Public speaking? Publishing content? Having performance reviews? Whatever it is, those painful tasks are probably where your competitive advantage lies. Law number 16. You can only manage what you can measure, Steven. Learn this law from direct experience. Good intentions without measurement lead nowhere. You can't improve what you don't track. You can't optimize what you don't measure. You can't prove progress without data. When Social Chain was growing rapidly, Steven felt busy and productive. But when he started actually measuring key metrics, he discovered uncomfortable truths. They were spending time on clients that weren't profitable. They were investing in marketing channels that didn't work. Team members were overwhelmed, but not productive. He felt like they were growing, but the numbers told a different story. Measurement brought clarity. Once he knew the numbers, decisions became obvious. Cut unprofitable clients. Double down on what's working. Restructure the team. Improve processes. The measurement didn't just provide information, it drove action. But measurement has to be strategic. You can't measure everything, you'll drown in data. Steven advocates for identifying the 3 to 5 key metrics that actually drive your success and obsessing over those. For a business, this might be customer acquisition cost, lifetime value, and retention rate. For personal development, it might be hours of deep work, books read, and meaningful conversations. The practice of measurement creates accountability. When you measure something, you can't lie to yourself about it anymore. You can't pretend you're making progress if the numbers say otherwise. This can be uncomfortable, but it's also liberating. You stop wasting time on activities that feel productive but aren't. You stop deceiving yourself about what's working. Steven also advocates for public measurement, sharing your metrics with your team or accountability partners. This creates external pressure to improve. When others can see your numbers, you're more motivated to make them better. The key insight: what you measure expands. If you measure revenue, revenue grows. If you measure customer satisfaction, satisfaction improves. If you measure learning, you learn more. Choose your measurements carefully because they'll shape what you become. Part 3. Mastering People. Laws 17 to 24. Law number 17. You hire for slope, not intercept. This law revolutionizes how you think about hiring in relationships. Most people hire based on where someone is right now, their current skills, experience, and achievements. Steven calls this hiring for intercept, the point where they currently intersect with your needs. He argues you should instead hire for slope, their trajectory and rate of growth. Here's why. Someone with incredible credentials but no growth trajectory will contribute exactly what they contribute today, forever. But someone with modest current abilities but a steep learning curve will surpass them within months or years. The person on an upward trajectory who's hungry to learn and improve becomes exponentially more valuable over time. When Steven interviews candidates, he asks different questions than most interviewers. He doesn't just want to know what they've accomplished. He wants to know what they're learning right now. What books are they reading? What skills are they developing? What failures have they experienced recently? How have they changed their mind about something important? The markers of high slope are curiosity, self-awareness, and resilience. Curious people actively seek new knowledge. Self-aware people recognize their gaps and work to fill them. Resilient people bounce back from setbacks stronger. These traits predict future performance better than past achievements. This applies beyond hiring. When choosing co-founders, partners, or even friends, look for slope. Who is growing? Who is challenging themselves? Who is becoming better? Those are the people who will elevate you and create compounding value in the relationship. The challenge is that high-intercept candidates are easier to spot and feel safer to bet on. They have the resume, the credentials, the proven track record. High-slope candidates require faith. You're betting on their future, not their past. But the highest-performing teams are built on high-slope individuals who grow together. Law number 18. A team's culture is defined by the worst behavior tolerated. This law cuts to the heart of organizational dysfunction. Steven argues that your stated values mean nothing. Your inspiring speeches mean nothing. What defines your culture is simple. What behavior do you tolerate? If you say you value quality but accept sloppy work, your culture is mediocrity. If you claim to value respect but tolerate toxic behavior from high performers, your culture is toxicity. If you preach accountability but let missed deadlines slide, your culture is excuses. Steven learned this when Social Chain faced a crisis. They had a brilliant employee who delivered exceptional results, but was terrible to work with, dismissive of colleagues, resistant to feedback, creating drama. For months, Steven tolerated this because of the person's output. But he noticed something troubling. Standards were slipping across the team. Others started thinking that results justified bad behavior. Some good team members left. Collaboration suffered. When he finally addressed the situation and let the person go, the relief was immediate. The team understood. No amount of individual brilliance justifies harming the collective. The message was clear, and the culture strengthened. The hard truth is that tolerating bad behavior is easier in the short term than confronting it. The confrontation is uncomfortable. You might lose a valuable contributor. You might create conflict. But the long-term cost of tolerance is much higher. It erodes trust, lowers standards, and drives away good people. This applies to all relationships, not just professional ones. In friendships, what behavior do you tolerate? In romantic relationships? In family dynamics? The boundaries you enforce define the relationship's health. The practice: identify the gap between your stated values and your actual boundaries. Where are you compromising? What behavior exists that contradicts your principles? Address it, even if it's painful. Your culture and your team, your relationships, your life will be whatever you demonstrate you'll accept. Law number 19. Disagree and commit. This law addresses one of the biggest obstacles to effective teams: the inability to move forward when there's disagreement. Steven advocates for a powerful principle borrowed from Amazon: disagree and commit. Here's how it works. Everyone gets to voice their opinion. Debate is encouraged. Dissent is welcomed. But once a decision is made, everyone commits fully to making it succeed, regardless of their personal view. You don't undermine the decision. You don't hold back effort. You don't get to say, "I told you so," if it fails. You fully commit. This solves multiple problems. First, it ensures diverse perspectives are heard. People know their input matters, even if it's not chosen. Second, it prevents endless debate. There's a clear point where discussion ends and action begins. Third, it eliminates the passive-aggressive resistance that kills execution. Everyone is genuinely trying to make the decision work. Steven implemented this at Social Chain during a major strategic decision. The leadership team was split on whether to expand into a new market. Half thought it was too risky. After extensive debate, Steven made the call to move forward. He then asked each person who disagreed to publicly commit. Not just agree to go along with it, but actively support it as if it were their idea. The result? The expansion succeeded because everyone worked to make it succeed. Would it have worked if half the team was secretly hoping to be proven right? Unlikely, but disagree and commit requires trust. People need to believe their input was genuinely considered. They need to trust that the decision maker is acting in good faith. They need to know that if this decision fails, they won't be blamed for not supporting it enthusiastically enough. For leaders, this means creating an environment where dissent is safe and valued. You want people to argue with you, to push back, to raise concerns. But you also need the authority to make final calls and the credibility to earn full commitment afterward. Law number 20. The expertise trap. Just when you become an expert, Steven warns, you become most vulnerable to failure. This law explains why dominant companies get disrupted, why successful people become obsolete, and why yesterday's expertise can become tomorrow's liability. Expertise creates blind spots. When you've mastered something, you stop seeing it fresh. You stop questioning assumptions. You become attached to the methods that made you successful. You dismiss new approaches because they contradict what you know works. Your expertise, which was once your greatest asset, becomes a prison. Steven saw this pattern in himself. As he became recognized as a social media expert, he noticed himself becoming defensive when continued Jan 20 new platforms emerged. TikTok, he dismissed it initially because it didn't fit his understanding of social media. New content formats? He resisted them because they contradicted his proven strategies. His expertise was making him inflexible. The antidote is what psychologists call beginner's mind, approaching situations with openness and curiosity. Even in areas where you're expert, it means being willing to learn from people less experienced. It means testing ideas that contradict your expertise. It means holding your knowledge lightly enough to change your mind. Steven forces himself to regularly learn completely new skills where he's a genuine beginner. He learns instruments. He tries new sports. He studies unfamiliar subjects. This keeps him comfortable with not knowing, with being bad at things, with learning from scratch. It prevents expertise from calcifying into arrogance. The practice in your area of expertise. Find the youngest or newest person you can and ask them what they see that you might be missing. Find ideas that contradict your knowledge and seriously consider whether they might be right. Read outside your field. Expose yourself to perspectives that challenge your expertise. Stay a student even as you become a master. Law number 21. You must become a storyteller in a world drowning in information. Steven argues that facts alone don't persuade, don't inspire, and don't stick in memory. Stories do. Whether you're pitching investors, leading a team, selling products, or building a personal brand, your ability to tell compelling stories determines your success. But most people tell terrible stories. They dump information. They list features. They recite facts. They bore their audience and wonder why nobody remembers or acts on what they said. Great stories have structure. They have a character facing a challenge. They build tension. They create emotional connection. They deliver transformation. Most importantly, they make the audience the hero of the story, not you. When Steven pitched Social Chain to investors, he didn't lead with market size and revenue projections. He told the story of a specific teenager scrolling social media. The moment that teenager saw a brand's post and the psychological journey from awareness to purchase. He made investors feel the power of social media rather than just understand it intellectually. Then he positioned Social Chain as the guide helping brands navigate this new landscape. This storytelling extended to internal communications. When explaining strategic changes to the team, he didn't just announce decisions, he told the story of where they'd been, where they were going, and why this change mattered for their collective journey. People don't resist stories the way they resist directives. The components of compelling stories: conflict, what's at stake; character, who are we rooting for; specificity, concrete details that make it real; emotion, how should we feel; and transformation, how do things change. The practice: take something you need to communicate a pitch, convert a difficult conversation, and convert it from information to story. Who's the character? What do they want? What's blocking them? How can you help? What changes? Tell that story instead of reciting facts. Law number 22. Build a competitive moat in business and life. Steven emphasizes, it's not enough to be good. You need to be defensible. A competitive moat is what prevents others from easily copying your success and eroding your advantage. Without a moat, any success is temporary. Warren Buffett talks about economic moats in business: brand, network effects, switching costs, proprietary technology. Steven extends this concept to personal and professional development. What makes you difficult to replace? What have you built that can't be easily copied? For Social Chain, the moat wasn't just their social media expertise. Others could learn that. It was their proprietary data on content performance across platforms, their network of influencer relationships, their cultural understanding of youth markets, and their brand reputation. These things took years to build and couldn't be easily replicated. For individuals, moats come from unique combinations. It's not just having a skill, it's having skills A plus B plus C that few others possess. It's not just having knowledge, it's having knowledge plus network plus reputation. It's not just being good at something, it's being good at something while having distribution, relationships, or credibility that amplifies that skill. Steven's personal moat is a combination: podcast interviewing skills plus entrepreneurial experience plus vulnerability and authenticity plus massive audience plus network of influential guests. Any one element could be copied, but the combination is his alone. The question to ask: if someone wanted to replace you tomorrow, what would be hardest to replicate? If the answer is nothing, you need to build a moat. This might mean developing a unique skill combination, building an audience, creating proprietary processes, establishing relationships, or developing a distinctive point of view. Moats take time to build, which is why you should start now. The best time to build a moat was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. Law number 23. Negotiate everything. This law challenges the discomfort many people feel around negotiation. Steven argues that almost everything in life is negotiable. But most people never negotiate because they're afraid of conflict, rejection, or appearing difficult. Here's what he realized. Not negotiating isn't neutral, it's a decision to accept less than what's possible. Every time you don't negotiate salary, you're deciding to earn less. Every time you accept the first offer, you're deciding to leave value on the table. Every time you avoid discussing terms, you're deciding to have less favorable conditions. But negotiation isn't about being aggressive or combative. The best negotiations are collaborative, finding solutions that create value for both parties. Steven negotiates by first understanding what the other side values, then finding creative solutions that give them what they care about while giving him what he cares about. Example: when negotiating with clients, he discovered that many cared more about payment terms than total price. By offering extended payment schedules, he could justify higher overall prices. Both parties, once the client got better cash flow, Social Chain got higher revenue. This principle extends beyond business. Negotiate with landlords. Negotiate deadlines. Negotiate responsibilities. Negotiate boundaries. Most people are more flexible than you think, but you'll never know if you don't ask. The keys to effective negotiation: do your research, know what's reasonable, create value, find win-wins, be willing to walk away. Desperate negotiators lose. Ask questions, understand the other side's constraints, and make it collaborative, not combative. You're solving a problem together. The practice: for the next month, negotiate something every day. Ask for a discount. Request better terms. Propose an alternative arrangement. Get comfortable with the discomfort. You'll discover that most people are willing to negotiate, and you'll stop leaving value on the table. Law number 24. You must build your personal brand in the age of information. Steven argues, your personal brand isn't optional, it's essential. But most people misunderstand what a personal brand means. It's not about being famous. It's not about having millions of followers. It's about being known for something specific by the people who matter to your goals. Your personal brand is simply what people think and say about you when you're not in the room. It's your reputation, made public and intentional. The question isn't whether you have a personal brand, you do. The question is whether you're building it intentionally or letting it develop randomly. Steven built his personal brand by being consistently public about his journey, his lessons, his failures, and his philosophy. He didn't pretend to have all the answers. He shared what he was learning in real time. This authenticity resonated and created a brand based on growth, transparency, and entrepreneurial thinking. But a strong personal brand requires focus. You can't be known for everything. Steven chose to focus on entrepreneurship, marketing, and personal development. He consistently created content in these areas. He turned down opportunities outside these domains. Over time, when people thought about young entrepreneurship or marketing innovation, they thought of him. The components of a strong personal brand? Consistency, your message is coherent across platforms and time. Specificity, you're known for particular things. Visibility, people actually encounter your work. And value, what you share genuinely helps people. Building a personal brand isn't narcissistic, it's strategic. It creates opportunities. It attracts the right people. It establishes credibility. It builds trust before meetings happen. When Steven meets potential partners or clients, they often already know his philosophy and approach. The relationship starts from a foundation of familiarity rather than from zero. The practice: define what you want to be known for. Create content regularly that demonstrates expertise and perspective in that area. Be authentic. Share your real experiences and thoughts. Be patient. Brands build over years, not weeks. And be consistent. Your brand is the sum of repeated impressions over time. Part 4. Mindset and Psychology. Laws 25 to 33. Law number 25. You must master the psychology of money. Money, Steven reveals, isn't primarily about mathematics. It's about psychology. The same financial strategies that work brilliantly for one person fail catastrophically for another. Not because the math is different, but because human behavior is different. Steven shares his own psychological journey with money. Growing up with financial scarcity created deep anxiety around spending. Early business success led to overcorrection, spending freely to prove he'd made it. Eventually, he realized that his relationship with money was driven by emotion and identity rather than strategy. The key psychological insights. First, money is a tool for freedom, not status. Spending to impress others is a trap that never ends. There's always someone richer to keep up with. Second, security comes from having options, not from having stuff. A large savings buffer creates calm. An expensive car creates stress about scratches. Third, enough is enough. Beyond a certain point, more money doesn't increase happiness, it increases complexity. Steven also addresses the psychology of spending versus investing. Every purchase is a choice between present pleasure and future freedom. That expensive dinner is delicious but disappears. That same money invested compounds. Neither choice is wrong, but you should make it consciously rather than impulsively. He advocates for what he calls psychological budgeting, organizing. Money based on how you feel about it rather than arbitrary categories. Have guilt-free spending money where you don't track every dollar. Have untouchable investment money you never consider spending. Have security money that sits in savings, creating peace of mind. The categories matter less than how they make you feel. But perhaps most importantly, Steven learned to separate self-worth from net worth. Your value as a human isn't determined by your bank balance. This sounds obvious, but internalizing it is difficult, especially in a culture that equates success with wealth. Making this separation allows you to pursue wealth strategically without needing it emotionally. Law number 26. You must understand your younger self. This law dives into psychology of a different kind. Steven argues that understanding why you are the way you are, your drives, fears, patterns, and wounds, is essential for intentional growth. Most people live on autopilot, reacting based on programming they don't understand. Steven underwent therapy and deep self-reflection to understand his younger self. He discovered that his relentless drive to succeed came partly from childhood experiences of financial instability. He was trying to ensure he'd never feel that vulnerability again. His difficulty trusting others stemmed from early betrayals. His perfectionism was rooted in seeking approval. None of these realizations made the patterns disappear. But awareness created choice. Instead of being unconsciously driven by childhood wounds, he could consciously decide whether those drives still served him. Sometimes they did. His work ethic was valuable. Sometimes they didn't. His trust issues were limiting. This isn't about blaming your past for your present. It's about understanding the operating system you're running on so you can upgrade it. Your childhood experiences created beliefs about yourself and the world. Some of these beliefs are helpful. Many are outdated or inaccurate. But you can't change what you don't recognize. The practice Steven recommends: write your autobiography. Not for publication, but for understanding. What were the defining moments of your early life? What did you learn from them? What beliefs did you form? How do those beliefs show up in your behavior today? Which ones should you keep? Which ones should you question? He also advocates for therapy or coaching, particularly during major transitions. Having someone trained to help you see your patterns is invaluable. You have blind spots you can't see alone. A skilled therapist or coach can illuminate them. The goal isn't to become someone different. It's to become more of who you actually are. Freed from unconscious patterns that no longer serve you. Law number 27. Your mental health determines your success. In a culture that often treats mental health as separate from professional success, Steven takes a firm stance. Your mental health is your most important business asset. Everything you build sits on the foundation of your psychological well-being. If that foundation cracks, everything else crumbles. Steven speaks candidly about his own mental health struggles: depression, anxiety, periods of burnout. For years, he viewed these as weaknesses to hide. He pushed through, thinking that was what successful people do. But he learned that unaddressed mental health issues don't just affect your personal life, they affect your decision-making, your relationships, your creativity, your resilience, and ultimately, your results. The turning point came when he realized that taking care of his mental health wasn't self-indulgent, was strategic. Regular exercise wasn't just about fitness, it regulated his mood and energy. Therapy wasn't just about feeling better, improved his leadership and relationships. Sleep wasn't just rest, it was when his brain processed information and consolidated learning. Meditation wasn't just relaxation, it improved his focus and emotional regulation. Steven built mental health practices into his non-negotiable routines. Exercise 5 times per week. Therapy every 2 weeks. 8 hours of sleep minimum. Regular meditation. Time in nature. Digital detoxes. These weren't luxuries to fit in when convenient, they were foundational practices that everything else depended on. But he also learned to recognize warning signs of declining mental health: irritability, loss of interest in things he normally enjoyed, difficulty concentrating, sleep problems, social withdrawal. When these appeared, instead of pushing harder, he'd pull back and address them. The business world is slowly recognizing this, but there's still stigma. Steven argues we need to normalize mental health struggles the way we've normalized physical health problems. No one thinks you're weak for treating a broken leg. Treating depression or anxiety should be equally unremarkable. The practice. Identify your mental health non-negotiables, the practices that keep you balanced and functioning well. Protect these as fiercely as your most important meetings. Track your mental state the way you track business metrics. And get help early when problems arise, rather than waiting until crisis. Law number 28. You must design your environment. This law shifts focus from internal willpower to external design. Steven argues that your environment shapes your behavior more than your intentions do. Relying on motivation and discipline is exhausting and inconsistent. Designing an environment that makes good behaviors easy and bad behaviors hard is sustainable and effective. Think about it. If you want to eat healthy, but keep junk food in your house, you're fighting a constant willpower battle. If you remove the junk food, the battle disappears. If you want to focus on deep work, but keep your phone next to you with notifications on, you're making concentration unnecessarily difficult. If you put your phone in another room, focus becomes natural. Steven became obsessed with environmental design. His office was designed to promote the behaviors he valued: standing desk for energy, plants for calm, whiteboards for thinking, no clutter for focus. His home was designed for rest and connection, comfortable spaces for conversation. No TV in the bedroom, books visible everywhere. His phone was configured to minimize distraction, notifications off for most apps, grayscale mode to reduce appeal, app limits enforced. But environmental design goes beyond physical spaces. It includes your social environment. Steven carefully curated who he spent time with, recognizing that you become the average of the people around you. He surrounded himself with people who were growing, who challenged him, who had higher standards than he did. These relationships elevated his behavior without requiring willpower. It includes your information environment. What media do you consume? What podcasts do you listen to? What websites do you visit? Each of these is feeding your brain with ideas and influences. Steven switched from consuming mindless entertainment to consuming educational content. The change in his thinking and behavior was dramatic. It includes your schedule environment. Instead of hoping to find time for important activities, Steven structured his calendar to ensure they happened. Exercise was scheduled. Reading time was blocked. Creative thinking sessions were protected. These weren't things he did if he had time, they were things his environment ensured would happen. The practice. Audit your environment in all its dimensions: physical, social, informational, temporal. Where is your environment making good behaviors difficult and bad behaviors easy? Redesign one element per week. Over time, you'll create an environment that pulls you toward your goals rather than fighting you every step. Law number 29. The 5 people closest to you define your future. This law takes environmental design and focuses it specifically on relationships. Steven credits much of his success to consciously choosing his inner circle. Jim Rohn said, "You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." Steven believes this deeply and has acted on it intentionally. Here's why this matters. The people around you set your standards. If your friends are content with mediocrity, maintaining high standards feels lonely and extreme. If your friends are constantly pushing boundaries, your ambition feels normal. If your peers waste time on gossip and complaining, you'll do the same. If your peers discuss ideas and opportunities, you'll elevate your thinking. But it's more than just standards. Your network determines your opportunities. The people you know introduce you to people they know. They share opportunities. They provide insights. They open doors. A strong network multiplies your effectiveness exponentially. Steven made hard decisions about relationships. He distanced himself from childhood friends who weren't growing. He ended relationships that were draining rather than energizing. He pursued friendships with people ahead of him, even when it felt uncomfortable or unlikely. Over time, his inner circle became a collection of ambitious, growth-oriented, supportive people who pushed him to be better. But this isn't about being coldly transactional or abandoning people going through hard times. It's about being intentional. Some relationships are seasonal. Some people are meant to be close for a phase of life, but not forever. That's natural and okay. What's not okay is passively accepting relationships that don't serve your growth or allowing toxic relationships to persist out of guilt or obligation. Steven also emphasizes reciprocity. You can't just take from your network, you need to add value. He made himself useful to people he admired. He shared insights. He made introductions. He provided support. Over time, these gestures built genuine friendships based on mutual value creation. The practice: identify your current 5 closest relationships. Are these people pushing you toward your goals or pulling you away? Are these relationships adding energy or draining it? Are you proud to be associated with these people? If not, make changes. Simultaneously, identify 5 people you'd like to have in your inner circle. Find ways to add value to them. Build those relationships intentionally over time. Law number 30. You must have hard conversations. Most people, Steven observes, will do almost anything to avoid difficult conversations. They'll tolerate bad behavior. They'll suppress resentment. They'll suffer in silence. They'll let problems fester, all because confrontation feels uncomfortable. But avoiding hard conversations doesn't prevent problems. It guarantees they'll get worse. That underperforming employee you're avoiding addressing, they're dragging down the whole team and probably don't even know they're falling short. That boundary violation in your relationship that you're letting slide, it's building resentment that will eventually explode. That friend who keeps disrespecting you, the friendship is deteriorating whether you acknowledge it or not. Steven learned that hard conversations, while uncomfortable in the moment, are acts of kindness and respect. When you address problems directly, you give people a chance to improve. You prevent small issues from becoming relationship-ending crises. You model healthy communication, and you free yourself from the emotional burden of unspoken resentment. But hard conversations require skill. Steven developed a framework. First, check your intentions. Are you trying to solve a problem, or just vent frustration? Second, be specific. Don't make vague accusations point to concrete behaviors. Third, focus on impact rather than intent. Don't assume why someone did something, describe how it affected you. Fourth, listen as much as you speak. Understand the other perspective. Fifth, collaborate on solutions rather than issuing ultimatums. He shares an example. A key team member was consistently late to meetings, disrupting everyone's schedule. Steven could have stewed in frustration or made passive-aggressive comments. Instead, he had a direct conversation. I've noticed you've been late to the last 5 meetings. This impacts the team because we have to either start without you or delay everyone else. I don't know what's causing this, but I need it to change. How can we solve this? The result? The team member revealed personal challenges affecting their schedule. They worked out a solution together. The problem was resolved, the relationship was strengthened, and the team became more functional. The practice: identify conversations you've been avoiding. Schedule them this week. Prepare by clarifying your intentions and the specific behaviors you need to address. Then have the conversation with respect and directness. You'll find that most hard conversations are far less terrible than you anticipated, and the relief of addressing the issue is immense. Law number 31. You must control the inputs, not the outputs. This law addresses the anxiety and frustration that comes from trying to control things you can't control. Steven learned through painful experience that you can't control outcomes. You can only control your inputs, your efforts, your processes. You can't control whether a client signs, but you can control how well you prepare the proposal. You can't control whether your content goes viral, but you can control how consistently you create and how much value you provide. You can't control whether investors fund you, but you can control how thoroughly you research, how compelling your pitch is, and how many investors you approach. This shift in focus from outputs to inputs is psychologically liberating. When you focus on outcomes, you're constantly anxious about things outside your control. When you focus on inputs, your empowered you can always control your effort and approach. Steven applied this to every area. In business growth, instead of stressing about revenue targets, he focused on activities that drive revenue: client meetings, proposal quality, relationship building. In content creation, instead of obsessing over view counts, he focused on consistency and quality. In personal development, instead of fixating on being successful, he focused on daily habits of learning and improvement. But this doesn't mean outcomes don't matter. They do. Outcomes provide feedback on whether your inputs are effective. If you're controlling your inputs but not getting desired outputs, it means you need to change your inputs, not try harder at the same ineffective approach. Steven uses what he calls input-output tracking. For any goal, he identifies the inputs he can control that should drive the desired output. He tracks both religiously. If the outputs aren't matching the inputs, he investigates. Maybe the inputs aren't the right ones. Maybe the volume is insufficient. Maybe there's a lag time he hasn't accounted for. But he always focuses his energy on refining inputs rather than worrying about outputs. The practice. For your major goals, identify the specific inputs you can control. Then commit to those inputs regardless of short-term results. Trust the process. Review regularly whether your inputs are producing desired outputs and adjust the inputs if needed. But never abandon good inputs. Just because outputs haven't appeared yet, compounding takes time. Law number 32. You must become comfortable being alone in our hyper-connected world, Steven argues. The ability to be alone, truly alone with your thoughts, has become a rare and valuable skill. Most people fill every moment with stimulation, scrolling, messaging, streaming, listening. They're never without input. They're never bored. They're never sitting with themselves. But this constant stimulation comes at a cost. You never process experiences. You never hear your own thoughts. You never tap into deeper creativity. You never face the uncomfortable truths about yourself and your life that emerge in quiet moments. You're busy, but you're not thinking. You're connected, but you're not reflecting. Steven built regular solitude into his life. Long walks without podcasts or music. Morning time without his phone. Evenings without screens. These periods felt uncomfortable at first. His mind raced. He felt anxious. He reached for his phone habitually. But over time, these moments of solitude became where his best thinking happened. In solitude, he processed the chaos of his busy life. He noticed patterns he'd been too distracted to see. He questioned assumptions he'd never examined. He got creative ideas he'd been too stimulated to receive. He faced difficult truths about relationships, decisions, and directions that he'd been avoiding. But solitude isn't just about productivity or clarity. It's about self-reliance. If you can't be comfortable alone, you're dependent on external stimulation and validation. You'll make decisions based on others' opinions because you can't hear your own. You'll feel anxious when separated from your devices or people. You'll lose touch with who you actually are beneath all the social conditioning and external input. Steven distinguishes between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is an unwanted state of disconnection that causes suffering. Solitude is a chosen state of aloneness that creates insight and peace. You can be alone without being lonely. And counterintuitively, regular solitude makes you better in relationships because you're bringing a fuller, more grounded self rather than seeking others to fill a void. The practice: schedule regular periods of solitude. Start small. 15 minutes of walking without input. Morning coffee without your phone. An evening without screens. Gradually extend these periods. Notice what emerges. Notice the discomfort. Sit with it. Over time, you'll develop a relationship with yourself that grounds everything else you do. Law number 33. You must remember you're going to die. We arrive at the final law, and perhaps the most profound. Steven ends with the ultimate perspective shifter. Memento mori. Remember you will die. This ancient wisdom isn't morbid, it's clarifying. Death is the one certainty, the ultimate deadline, the final constraint. When you truly internalize your mortality, trivial concerns fall away. That embarrassing moment you're dwelling on, meaningless in the face of death. That person's opinion you're obsessed with, irrelevant. That grudge you're holding, a waste of your limited time. That fear stopping you from pursuing what you really want, suddenly less powerful when you realize time is finite. Steven keeps death awareness present, not in a depressing way, but in a motivating way. Every morning he asks, if this were my last year, would I spend today this way? Would I work on this project? Would I have this conversation? Would I hold this resentment? The answer clarifies what actually matters. This isn't about becoming reckless or nihilistic. It's about becoming intentional. You have limited time. You don't know how limited. This reality should inform every decision. The relationships you invest in, the work you pursue, the experiences you choose, the risks you take. Steve Jobs famously said that remembering he would die was the most important tool he'd encountered to help him make big life choices. Because almost everything external expectations, pride, fear of embarrassment or failure falls away in the face of death, leaving only what truly matters. Steven also emphasizes death as the equalizer. No matter how successful you become, how much wealth you accumulate, how famous you get, you die. Everyone does. This should be humbling and freeing. It means the game isn't about accumulating the most. It's about living in a way that feels meaningful to you. It's about creating value. It's about connection. It's about growth. It's about becoming who you're capable of being. The practice: regularly contemplate your mortality. Not morbidly, but honestly. Imagine your funeral. What do you hope people would say about you? What would you regret not doing? What would you regret spending time on? Then adjust your life accordingly. Don't wait for a crisis to remember that your time is finite. Let death awareness guide you toward a life that honors the precious, limited time you have. And there we have them all, 33 laws from Steven Bartlett's The Diary of a CEO. These aren't just business principles. They're a comprehensive philosophy for building a remarkable life. Let's recap the major themes that run through these laws. First, intentionality over accident. Success rarely happens by chance. You must be deliberate about what you build, who you become, who you surround yourself with, and how you spend your limited time. Second, process over outcomes. Focus on inputs you can control: your learning, your effort, your habits. Your environment and trust that outputs will follow. Third, authenticity over imitation. Your unique combination of skills, experiences, and perspectives is your greatest advantage. Lean into what makes you different, rather than trying to be like someone else. Fourth, growth over comfort. Everything worthwhile requires discomfort. Embrace difficult conversations, productive paranoia, controlled failure, and challenges that stretch you. Fifth, people over everything. Your relationships, who you hire, who you befriend, who you learn from, who you serve, determine almost everything about your trajectory. Sixth, self-awareness as foundation. Understanding yourself, your patterns, your wounds, your values enables intentional growth rather than unconscious repetition. And finally, mortality as motivation. You're going to die. This isn't depressing, it's clarifying. It focuses attention on what actually matters and cuts through the noise of trivial concerns. Steven Bartlett's journey from university dropout to CEO of a publicly traded company wasn't luck. It was the systematic application of these laws learned through experience, failure, and reflection. But here's the beautiful truth. These laws are available to anyone. You don't need special talent, privileged background, or perfect circumstances. You need intentionality, persistence, and the courage to act on what you know. So what now? Don't just consume these ideas, implement them. Choose one law that resonated most strongly with you. One law that addresses your biggest current challenge or opportunity. Then commit to living that law for the next month. Build it into your habits. Test it in your decisions. See what changes. Then choose another law, and another. Over time, these principles compound. They reinforce each other. They transform not just your results, but who you are and how you move through the world. Thank you for spending this time with me exploring the diary of a CEO. If this summary added value to your life, please like this video, subscribe to WordEcho for more book summaries like this, and share it with someone who would benefit from these laws. Remember, you're going to die. What are you going to do with the time you have left? Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building your remarkable life.